There was this woman who applied for a job as an administrative assistant at our company, and she had a name that was recognizable. Let's say Slater or something that like you don't hear a lot. Everybody loved her right away. She came up with all kinds of innovative ideas to make, the executives team lives easier. And she basically made herself quite indispensable very quickly. This was in COVID time, so everything was remote. So we never met her, but we saw her on video, and a lot of times, actually, now that I think of it, I think she had her video off. Long story short, my friend is talking to another friend and she's sort of saying, I love this Slater girl. She's amazing. And she's like, wait, you have a Slater? I have a Slater. And they figure out that they both have hired the same person who is the administrative assistant at both companies. Of course, there was an investigation, but it was just this moment of wow, people are taking advantage of the fact that they can be remote and essentially doing more jobs.
It's actually maybe not as uncommon as we might think. Amongst my colleagues, it's actually starting to become a thing now that we're trying to more actively combat. But yeah, there will be people, particularly in remote settings, that manufacture a complete profile, a resume, a LinkedIn, will attend interviews off camera or on camera, and then be hired. And it's someone in some foreign country who's doing this work and someone else is profiting off of it. A lot of companies are not going back to requirement to on-site interview.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to Workplace Weirdness, the non-HR HR podcast where we dive into the strangest office situations and most awkward workplace dramas. I'm your host, Maya Kadar-Kowalski, and I'm a former Chief Culture Officer and Head of People. I've seen and heard it all, so truly no judgments. Let's get real and explore the cringy, confusing, and chaotic side of office life. Today, we're discussing the return of in-person job interviews, remote workers feeling out of the loop, and salary disparities between new and established employees. I'm joined today by David Hanrahan, the SVP of People Success at SolarWinds. David's career has spanned 2 decades leading people teams in major global companies including Eventbrite, Niantic, Zendesk, Twitter, Electronic Arts, and Universal Pictures. David's philosophy prioritizes fostering leadership development, compassionate people practices, and high engagement in high performing cultures globally. David, I'm so happy to have you here.
Thank you so much for having me here.
You've really worked at a lot of interesting companies that have spanned media, tech, entertainment. I can't help but be drawn to one name in particular, Niantic, the makers of Pokemon Go, which for listeners who may have missed was a huge craze when it came out. Were you as obsessed as the rest of the world with Pokemon?
Yeah, so I was at Zendesk at a time right after their IPO, but they were still in growth mode and trying to mature. And we landed this company called Niantic, and then we showed this graph at the all hands of like, look at how many tickets they have. It's just like this hockey stick of growth. That was the time that back in that was when Pokemon Go craze just first started out, and you would see sort of TV spots and sort of articles about people accidentally running out into traffic and like all sorts of societal mishaps of just playing the game. I was really interested in it from a sort of growth perspective of like, what will be next? This company, Niantic, Pokemon Go, what's their next play? And then they coincidentally reached out and I joined them at a really kind of cool, fun time.
Have you ever attended a Pokemon Fest?
I went to Pokemon Go Fest in Chicago. Actually, brought my family, and it's really like that. That's where you kind of connect the culture of the company when you start to like actually interact with the players, who are all lovely, and like it's a collaborative game. Pokemon Go is really collaborative. There's such like a good human spirit about it. You just walk around this park in Chicago trying to catch Pokemon. Thousands of people just walking around, talking, and smiles on their face, and we would get letters from these players where it helped them deal with agoraphobia, or it helped them reconnect with their son, or one of their family members is disabled. It was like a game that they found a way to play it with them. And it really sort of connected you. When you're actually playing it and seeing it up close with the players.
I personally really loved it because my son also really connected to it. Of all the games out there, it wasn't one where he was sitting in front of the the iPad. He actually got up and went somewhere. I have like a soft spot in my heart for the game. Can you talk a little bit about the cultures at some of those media companies specifically?
Yeah, EA, Twitter, Niantic, Eventbrite as well. I can kind of touch on any of them, but there is, you see it. Like there's a very clear connection. EA is more of a competitive game. There's Madden, there's shooting games, a little bit more machismo in at EA than at Niantic, which is very family friendly and very collaborative and kind. Almost kind to a fault. Twitter, when I joined them, that was before their IPO. The legacy of Twitter was a little bit more of like anarchic, of like kind of like we're going to thumb our nose to authority, and then they became, the global town square of like the product was used, for the Arab Spring and sort of like powering protests, and that was the ethos of of what the product was kind of doing, was being used for. And then you would see that internally, this idea of kind of thumbing our nose to authority, which sometimes made it hard if you're in the HR team. And then Eventbrite, a live events company that had to go remote during the pandemic. That was a really like case study in sort of culture change. It was a company synonymous with the product that we had, which was live events. Like we kind of thought of them interchangeably. And then you flipped it, like, oh, surprise, global pandemic, we all have to be remote. That was very difficult.
So now I know that at SolarWinds, you're doing a bit of culture building and shaping after an acquisition. Can you tell us about how you're approaching designing a winning culture at SolarWinds?
Yeah, that's very timely. So we were acquired early in the year by Turn River. SolarWinds is a B2B software company in the sort of observability kind of cybersecurity space. As any go through any big acquisition, whether it's EA or Niantic or these other places that have gone through an acquisition, there can be an inevitability that the culture is going to change just inherently because we have new owners. And Turn River doesn't want to change our culture. So it's really on us to preserve our culture. Our values are, it's CARE is the acronym: collaborative, accountable, ready, and empathetic. Any company that has values, a rubric is always a sort of like, there's head and there's heart. There's the head is, I'm going to read this definition of the value and I'll scratch my head like, yeah, I think I understand that. But when you tell a story, is when I just instantly connect and cross culturally, right? Like the story can connect the team in Manila to the team in Cork to the team in Austin. And we've realized that the power of stories as we reignite these values is really critical. So we're gathering all these stories between now and when we do relaunch them. That's been a big focus for us, is let's gather the stories.
What kinds of stories? Can you give us some examples?
A really good story to me is something where it was difficult. Niantic, their values, their culture was really forged in one of those Pokemon Go festivals, the very first one that went south. They crashed the servers. Thousands of people were gathered and the game wouldn't work. The CEO got in front of people who were like booing and like unhappy and sort of got on a megaphone to explain what was going on. And everyone from the head of legal to the head of product to all the engineers who were gathered, they worked tirelessly to, number one, apologize, but also try and get the game back up and running. Everyone said that's a moment.
It is such a moment. Wow, I got chills when you started talking about that. So, actually, just curious, how did that end up? So, did people have to go home and then they tried again a different day, or just
The event was largely ruined. So, but the subsequent festivals became so strong in terms of having that learning that ever since then, Pokemon Go Fest has gone from that failure moment to now it's a worldwide phenomenon. They do these in Europe and Asia. So today, Pokemon Go Fest is a huge success.
the story that you're at least right now using as an example, which is a time that something was difficult, is actually what we often ask, in hiring. We ask open-ended questions like, "Can you tell us a time that was difficult that you like overcame," or something like that. So it's kind of interesting that that then becomes actually such an important piece of your day-to-day story as a company. So
Yeah.
let me ask you, are there any mistakes you made early on in your career that taught you big lessons?
At EA, coming from my own personal passion, I came up with this idea or suggestion, and I had been thinking about it all day, and I'm like, I got to send this to my boss, who is the VP of HR and the COO of the company. I had multiple tabs open on my computer, which all happens. I was going to put in a hyperlink of some sort of rubric or some model or something I was found on. I Googled one, at one point. I thought it was really clever. Um, I didn't copy the right link. I copied a YouTube clip of Borat, if you've ever
Oh
seen the
no!
movie.
Oh my god! Oh
and
my god, I'm so
and
sorry.
I include I and it was like it was the most important part of my pitch was click here was like here's a model of
Oh,
what I'm talking.
I'm honestly, like, I, like, need to crawl under my table right now. That's
Yeah.
excruciating. Oh, that's 'cause it sounds like a punchline. It sounds like, "Wait, did you mean to do that?" You know, it sounds like almost like you might have intentionally, I don't know, wanted to make a joke of some sort. Ugh, how
Yeah.
did you get out of that one in some elegant way, or
Own your mistake. You just got to own your mistake. I mean, one option is should I just not say anything and see if they even read my email? That's one option. But, I owned it. Just dumb, just silly, Dumbo.
So, before we get to our listener questions, let's stay up to date with the week in work. This is our take on recent trends in the workplace that are changing how we work or how we think about work life. So, there was this Wall Street Journal article that is saying that live in person interviews are coming back. Companies like Google, Cisco, and McKinsey are reinstating face to face in person live job interviews. And there's been a rise in AI supported fraud in the interview process. And people are generating everything from answers to interview questions all the way to creating fake identities. So, David, I know that you're hiring now at SolarWinds. And so I thought this maybe would interest you. So, do you hire in person or over Zoom?
I would say the vast majority of our interview panels or sort of one-on-one interviews will be primarily on site, but there's a hybrid. Any one particular candidate probably has a mix. They have a mix of like I come on site into Austin or into Cork, but then I have to interview someone who is overseas, and I'm on a virtual, I'm on a Teams or Zoom. But in general, every candidate who interviews with us probably does come on site at one point. A lot of my chief people officer colleagues months ago started raising this red flag, started saying, "Hey, we're encountering this. What are you doing?" And my first reaction was, "That's crazy. That's bound to just be a blip." But now here we are with this articles being written about it, and it's actually a pretty rampant issue now.
Are there more precautions that you're taking as a team? Are people making more visits, I guess, overseas, things like that? I'm just curious how that was
Yeah.
working.
I don't think the on-site interview is the silver bullet per se. It's not the one thing that if I just do this, it'll prevent it all. It's helpful, but I think there's generally a mix of like prevention, detection, and redesign, and sort of things that you can do in each of those. An example could be just back to this idea: is it okay to cheat? Is it okay? This is a debate. Is it okay to actually use AI to get a leg up on some of the candidates? If you don't think it's okay as a hiring team or as a company, you might need to be explicit that like we actually do not allow for any AI assistance during live interviews or during the assessment period. So having a guideline up front. But on this prevention topic, you might consider there's like tools that we can use, like platforms like Codility or HackerRank that have built in like plagiarism checks. We could be trained to kind of detect having some follow-up questions, like the depth of knowledge. There may be multiple people on the call, which AI could actually get confused by. The Schmidt and Hunter study found that structured behavioral-based interviews are only one of three or so assessment methodologies that if you do them in tandem, create the strongest predictive validity. Those others are work samples and then even cognitive ability testing, which is controversial. But the work samples part is I'm going to come in or I'm going to go on Zoom and I'm going to walk you through something that I built, a case study or presentation. I like that model of prevention, detection, redesign.
Say somebody is tasked with making a presentation as one of their criteria for getting hired. What if they, do it through ChatGPT? What do you think of that?
Well, on the work sample, it might be a case study or a presentation, a simulation of something that we're dealing with here. So part of it is, hey, I could use AI to just churn that out, right? But there's part of it that's going to require judgment. And then in the live conversation, when I'm probing with you around, talk to me a little bit more about why you think that's right. And it's
Mhm.
something that AI generated, right? I'm not only assessing the quality of your work sample, but I'm assessing how you applied your own judgment in that bullet right there or that
Mhm.
thesis or that I'm not only walking through the presentation you pulled together, which looks beautiful, by the way, but also your judgment.
In other words, the choices that you made, because I think part of it is, how we can curate even what, let's say, a Chat GPT or some other tool can give to us. We still have to choose and understand why we're making certain choices. So basically, putting the person in a situation where they have to walk you through that choice process.
Either we're okay with using AI to get a leg up or we're not okay with it. If we think it's okay to do this as an employee, do we really not want the candidate to do that? That's a choice you have to make as a company.
So now it's time to go for a quick break. When we come back, we have a question from a listener who is fully feeling the meaning of remote work. Hey, quick break from AI. If you're enjoying Workplace Weirdness and you're thinking, wow, it's comforting to know other people's jobs are just as messy as mine, do us a favor. Follow the show, leave a review, or share this episode with the one coworker who would absolutely get it. New episodes drop every other Wednesday, and we've got more cringy emails, baffling bosses, and anonymous confessions coming your way. This is your safe space to laugh about the weird stuff work throws at you. Stay weird. Now, back to the episode. Welcome back to Workplace Weirdness. Before we get to our listener questions, I want to mention that if you have a workplace question, go to our website at workplace-weirdness.com and click on Share Your Story. We'd love to hear from you. I'm here with SolarWinds SVP of People Success, David Hanrahan. David, we have a listener who is feeling increasingly marginalized at work because they're remote. Let's check it out. Dear Workplace Weirdness, I've been with my company for 5 years, and during COVID, I relocated to another state. Since then, I've been in a fully remote role, which has actually been a lifesaver because I'm also a mom of 2 kids. But here's the problem: half my company is remote, half is in office, and leadership is all based at headquarters. Promotions and big opportunities almost always seem to go to the people in the office. Meanwhile, those of us who are remote, especially parents who need the flexibility, are left out of key conversations or find out about decisions after they've already been made. I want to be considered for promotions and kept in the loop without being written off as less committed just because I'm not physically in the office every day. How do I push for equity and visibility in a hybrid workplace without sounding like I'm just complaining or asking for special treatment? So, this has got to be a common feeling nowadays in hybrid workplaces. What's your take on this, David?
Well, first off, that person should not feel alone. This is very common, and it's more common, particularly where if the company doesn't really have, sort of a playbook. So, in absence of that, yeah, this can feel really difficult. And it's interesting that employees who work from an office oftentimes want, like, they wish they could work remotely, and then oftentimes for those who work remotely, they have pain. So, there's pros and cons, obviously, with working in an office or working remotely. So, there's a couple of thoughts. One is that you might shift the frame from the personal to systemic. So as you're sort of experiencing this as a problem, you want to raise the flag rather than saying, "Hey, I feel left out." As a remote employee, frame it as, we're unintentionally creating two classes of employees: those who are at the headquarters and those who get more visibility and opportunities versus those who are remote. And that's a risk to equity and retention. Building intentional visibility. And I had this one in my last company. I was remote, and the rest of the executive team were actually in office. So what I would do is I'd more proactively schedule regular one-on-ones with those leaders, have an agenda, volunteer for some more efforts, kind of make my wins visible, have weekly updates. Whereas for people in office, they allow for the flybys. They allow for sort of like, hey, I'm going to pop by, and you can't really do that as a remote employee. So many employees, remote employees, they wait for that recognition. So don't. So build that intentional visibility. And then two last thoughts, influence process changes to the extent that you can. Suggest some lightweight rituals that can involve everyone, such as, how we share announcements, in all hands, executive sponsors for remote talent. Maybe you need the remote site leader. So if you have site leaders in different offices, maybe someone can be the executive sponsor for the remote talent. And then finally, on tone, it kind of aligns to my first thought around how you shift the frame. Position is helping the company stay competitive and fair, and not as a personal thing for me.
But one of my suggestions was going to be to just be a little bit more active on communication channels like Slack or Teams or whatever it is that the company uses. For what it's worth, when you're not being visible, then at least you can sort of talk yourself up. And then I actually also thought, I know it's a bit of a stretch and not everybody can do it because of budget or all kinds of other things, but it would be not the worst idea to take a trip to the headquarters every once in a while to find even a work reason perhaps to come in probably once a quarter or at least twice a year to try to still be visible in some capacity.
It's budget well spent if you can convince, your boss or whoever that holds the budget, purse strings.
Well, thanks, David. And listener, know that other remote workers in your company are probably feeling the same thing. I hope that you're able to build that social capital despite the challenges. Um, our next question is from a listener who really, really wants to do the right thing around salary and equity, but leadership is not interested. Here we go. Hi, Maya. I'm part of the people team at a SaaS company that's been scaling quickly since our Series C funding. In 1 year, we've doubled in size, hiring a ton of new engineers and sales reps. The problem is, some of the new hires are being brought in at salaries much higher than our existing employees are making, sometimes tens of thousands more for the same role. Employees are starting to compare notes and morale is tanking. I've even heard people joke about quitting and reapplying just to get the salary bump. Leadership knows about this issue but will not address it head on. They keep saying things like, we can't afford to make across the board adjustments. As someone in HR, I'm caught in the middle. Employees don't feel heard, but if I push leadership too hard, I am viewed as not aligned with the business. How do you navigate pay equity issues as an HR professional when leadership refuses to act? Thanks, stuck in the middle. That's pretty tough. How do you manage a situation like this in a highly competitive market? What do you think, David?
It's a tough but very common issue, and so I'll think about it for that person who's kind of like in the people team, but is not leading the people team per se. One of the reasons it gets tougher, or the tension of it grows, is the absence of information, the absence of a response. Even firstly, it's important, if we can, to acknowledge those concerns transparently. That sort of acknowledgement at least deflates the tension of like, are they even listening? Are they even do they even think about this is important? After that response, I think there's a forum that will take place between HR and the leadership, the leadership of this function, of the sales function, engineering. I think it's important to push leadership with data and not emotion. There's a comp equity analysis, there's internal compression, there's market ranges, there's turnover that's happening. Execs are going to respond better, whether it's the CFO or the head of that function. They'll respond better to a business case with data more than like the moral appeal. As an HR professional, you are the bridge. If leadership won't act, you got to focus on what you can control. You got to focus on what you can share, your communication clarity, and then your advocacy for a timeline from what will happen next. But you are not necessarily in control. This person is they can't make the decision. There is a leadership body that has to make the decision. Back to that leadership, the last thing I would say is be clear that it is their decision. So there can be this like, who's on first scenario where, sorry, we couldn't give increases. It's HR's fault. Frame it back to the leader as like, this is a budget choice that you can make. You probably have a budget right now where you have money that you need for a system launch. You have money that you need for a marketing initiative or something else. So you need to decide, when you're going to budget to fix the problem, because we don't have a merit cycle or some other magic, sort of line item that is going to solve this issue for you sometimes.
I do think it is the tenuous bridge that that most HR professionals have to walk is how to advocate for the employees and then also be able to understand why there are certain issues at hand here. And I think that that's exactly it. Like I think the listener who wrote in needs a better understanding themselves on why the leadership might have chosen this. And so even just walking through that with your boss could give you a better strategy. But then I would also sort of manage up and say, listen, guys, we really need a better strategy because otherwise we have a lot of dissatisfied employees here. And I can just feel it, sort of bubbling. So there is an art to, I think, to pushing back and to getting a little bit more clarity from the head of your department. That's my take, at least. So thanks, David, for your input. And listener, hopefully you can have a heart to heart with the right people in management, either to get clarity or to help create some change. That's what I hope for you. So now, every week we cover one question addressing the kind of cringeworthy work event that'll make you wish that all your colleagues were AI generated. This week's cringeworthy question comes from an employee who is feeling pretty queasy over a new break room ritual. Dear Workplace Weirdness, one of my coworkers has taken to using the office break room sink to shave their beard. At first, it was just hair clippings everywhere, but now it's become a full performance. They bring their razor, their shaving cream, and sometimes even chat on the phone while standing at the sink mid shave. People are avoiding the break room like it's a haunted house, but no one wants to confront them because, well, what do you even say? How do we handle the situation without embarrassing our coworker? From the ick. Oh boy. Why would anyone think this was a good idea? And how do we get this guy to step away from the sink?
Yeah, that's break room, by the way, not the
Yeah,
bathroom. This is the
I was
office.
thinking that too.
So,
It's like where people eat and have their snacks and coffee, if I understand correctly.
right,
So that's really
right.
gross.
We probably all had these. This kind of a hygiene thing, hygiene etiquette type of thing. And so I think it's important to start with kind of curiosity and empathy in mind, and that this is a facilities or etiquette issue. But don't underestimate the possibility that actually no one has talked to this person yet. Sometimes what can happen is you see something, you observe something so glaring, like not okay, a behavior in a meeting or something like the shaving your beard in a sink multiple times. You might assume that like someone's going to talk to this person. Don't underestimate that when you first come to them that no one has brought it up yet. My gut reaction is you observe it, you have a moment where not tomorrow, not 4 hours later at the end of the day, but you have a moment ideally right now like, hey, can I grab you for a second? And ideally this is after they've cleaned their beard and they don't have shaving cream on their face. But, "Hey, wanna chat with you something, but what's going on?" And they say, "What do you mean what's going on? How are you doing?" Like, "What do you mean?" Like, "I noticed you shaving your beard in the sink. Are you doing alright? Like, what's going on right now?" They might not be aware that this is an issue. Maybe they come from a different culture. Maybe they sort of like they did this at their office. They just not aware that this is an issue. So starting with curiosity and with almost with an empathy in mind that no one has talked to them about this yet. You're just wanting to know what's going on. I see you shaving in the sink, and they might say something like, "Yeah, I'm shaving in the sink," and then that gives you what you need versus, "Oh, someone else talked to me about this as well. I'm really sorry about that." Or I don't have a place at home I can shave, and like I'm going through something. So just don't underestimate also that there could be something going on with this person, but after you get that out of the way, you say, listen, this is important. I've noticed this. A few people as well have noticed it. This is a shared space where we have food and it's a hygiene and an etiquette issue. Can you use the restroom? Can you shave at home? It's a short, brief conversation. Don't dance around it. Don't package it into other stuff. Hey, how is work? How are things going with you? Like, how are the kids? I would just be short to the point, but it starts with a question, starts with a curiosity and empathy in mind.
Yeah, I love that. I think it's great. I love the fact that you started with observation because that's where you're like not taking a side. You're just sort of stating what you see and then you let the person speak for themselves because like you said it could be that they have some sort of issue at home. I mean, I didn't think of that at all, but you're absolutely right. I hope our advice helps you stop this guy in his stubbly tracks. That's our show. I want to thank you, David, for sharing your, believe it or not, over 2 decades of culture shaping and team building expertise with us today. It's been really fun having you here. Any last thoughts before we go? Any plugs you want to make? Any things you want to tell us about, future plans?
It was a great conversation. Thank you so much for having me and touch on a lot of topics I really love. People can follow me on LinkedIn if they want to or connect with me there. But thanks for having me. It's great time.
Okay, and again, if you've got some weirdness in the workplace, please go to our website at workplace-weirdness.com and click on Share Your Story. We might feature your question in an upcoming episode. This is Maya Kadar-Kowalski reminding you to embrace the quirks and make the most out of the office chaos. In the meantime, keep working, and whenever possible, stay weird. Today's show was produced by me, Maya Kadar-Kowalski, and Felicia Wang, and written by Dana Burnell Lowe. Molly Citram is our content curator, and thanks to Billy Samoa Salibi and the rest of the team at Podify who helped engineer this episode. Thanks also to David Hanrahan for joining us on today's episode, and thanks to you for listening to Workplace Weirdness. Make sure you're subscribed to the show on YouTube, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you listen to podcasts. We'll be back next time for another breakdown of all things weird from a workplace near you.